On the night of October the 7th, remarks made by Vice President Mike Pence in the vice presidential debate that were critical of the Chinese Communist Party, CCP, and its handling of the COVID-19 pandemic appeared to be censored in China. The debate between Pence and challenger Senator Kamala Harris was broadcast in China on US broadcaster CNN, which according to AAP can only be viewed in Chinese homes where foreigners live, in international hotels, or by certain authorities or academic institutions. A portion of the debate, around 30 seconds long, was abruptly cut off as Pence began to criticize the Chinese regime, saying, "China is to blame." He was referring to the CCP virus pandemic that has infected more than 7.5 million Americans, including President Donald Trump, and killed more than 211,000. The first to report the incident was Nathan Vanderclip, the Globe and Mail's Beijing correspondent, who shared 2 images of his television screen, with one showing a test image reading, "No signal, please stand by." Vanderclip wrote, "China censored Pence's comments on China. Signal returned when Harris began talking again." He wrote in a separate Twitter post, "What it looks like when China censors a vice presidential debate after a question about China is asked, and then lifts the blackout when conversation appears set to move on." The interrupted portion of the debate included remarks from Pence echoing the Trump administration's line that the Chinese Communist regime's cover-up and mismanagement is to blame for the global pandemic. Pence said,
"China is to blame for the coronavirus. And President Trump is not happy about it. He's made that very clear, made it clear again today. China and the World Health Organization did not play straight with the American people. They did not let our personnel into China to get information on the coronavirus until the middle of February."
The broadcast of the debate on October the 7th resumed when the topic of debate changed. In a similar incident in September, the BBC's China correspondent Stephen McDonnell said the broadcaster's coverage was censored on multiple occasions, including once when he was set to talk about the US government's ban on imports from 5 of China's entities accused of using ethnic Uyghurs as forced labor. McDonnell wrote, "When censors pull at BBC World's TV feed in #China, as they just did during coverage of a #Hong Kong court case, this is now what comes up on the screen instead of just black, no signal. Looks like attempted deception to me, implying a technical difficulty rather than censorship." While censorship in China has tightened under President Xi Jinping, questions of transparency around the current outbreak are especially sensitive after Beijing's cover-up of the extent of the 2003 SARS epidemic fueled suspicion and mistrust and led to official calls for openness this time around. Content from US channels is regularly blocked by Chinese censors if critical of the communist regime. Responding to the censoring, Tim Murta, director of communications for Trump's re-election campaign, posted on Twitter, "China censored Mike Pence, but let their people hear Kamala Harris. What's that tell you?"
In an interview with the Epoch Times on Tuesday, former New York City mayor and President Trump's personal attorney, Rudy Giuliani, said he holds China responsible for President Donald Trump becoming infected with the Chinese Communist Party, CCP virus. The CCP virus outbreak began in Wuhan, China in late 2019. The CCP's attempts to cover up the contagion and the regime's overall negligence contributed to the global outbreak of the virus. In a Twitter post dated October 6, Giuliani wrote, "Communist Chinese Party virus equal COVID-19. He also told the Epoch Times that the CCP virus is the best name for the novel coronavirus.
I thought it'd be much better to call it the CCP virus because this is not the Chinese people. The vast majority of the Chinese people have no idea, they were even the victims to this. They were as victimized as we were."
He said that while locking down cities inside China, the CCP allowed Chinese people to fly to New York and Italy. That act can be regarded as an act of war.
When they closed down China, they knew how dangerous this was, and they wanted to make sure that the rest of the world was damaged as much as China was. That's a totally despicable thing to do. You could consider it an act of war if you want.
He believes that some Americans don't want to use the term the CCP virus because they are secretly doing business with the CCP, especially the Biden family.
I think it's because of the Chinese Communist Party's hold on a lot of America that it doesn't stick, and the commercial relationships with China, which a lot of very influential people consider to be more important than America. I think it's because of the Chinese Communist Party's hold on the Democrat Party in particular.
Giuliani said that Joe Biden's son, Hunter Biden, got $1.5 billion from China when Biden was the vice president, and he recently told the media that evidence will be unveiled in October.
Joe has never prevailed in a negotiation with China for the benefit of the U.S. China has beaten him on every negotiation, and there's a good reason for it. No country has contributed more money to the Biden crime family than the Chinese Communist Party.
Giuliani said that based on the information so far, the CCP virus is an engineered product from China's research lab. There are two possibilities. One is that the virus is a finished product of the CCP's bioweapon research. The other is that the virus was somehow released from the lab when the CCP is still in the process of engineering various viruses to produce a supervirus. President Trump has said the United States will make China pay a very substantial price for its role in the outbreak, and the Trump administration has taken a series of actions, such as announcing an immigration ban for Chinese Communist Party members, investigating Chinese companies listed in the United States, sanctioning Chinese tech companies Huawei and SMIC, strengthening the cooperation between the United States and Taiwan, and forming a new transnational alliance with the inclusion of NATO's Asian members to defend freedom and democracy. The U.S. Citizen and Immigration Services recently announced that any intending immigrant who is a member or affiliate of the Communist Party or affiliated with the Communist Party is inadmissible to the United States. Many Chinese who have followed the advice of Falun Gong practitioners and quit the Chinese Communist Party felt fortunate for themselves. Falun Gong practitioners believe that the whole world is fighting the final battle in taking down the CCP and are urgently urging more Chinese to quit the CCP as soon as possible. Liu Jiefen has been living in the United States for nearly 3 years. She announced her withdrawal from the Communist Youth League in 2011 when she was still in China.
I learned about the FreeGate software that helps to break through the internet firewall in 2011. It was until then that I read about the true history of the CCP and the campaign to withdraw from the CCP. I was a member of the Youth League, so I immediately declared my withdrawal from the Youth League on the Epoch Times website. About 3 months later, it occurred to me that my daughter also needed to quit, so I helped her quit as well.
New York resident Yu Chun Guang quit the CCP in 2014, and he felt very fortunate for himself. He heard about the software developed by Falun Gong practitioners to break through internet blockade in 2012 when he was still in China. Using this software, he learned the true history of the Great Famine, the Cultural Revolution, the Tiananmen Massacre, the persecution of Falun Gong, and live organ harvesting. He also read the book, 9 Commentaries of the Chinese Communist Party.
2014年11月19号
I chose to quit the CCP on the 10th anniversary of the publication of the 9 Commentaries of the CCP, which was November 19, 2004. I announced my withdrawal on the Epoch Times website, along with my wife and my daughter.
New York resident Wang Yan expressed his respect for Falun Gong practitioners' continuous effort to persuade Chinese people to quit the CCP.
I first came into contact with the 9 commentaries of the CCP when I was in China. I found a DVD in my mailbox. I thought to myself, Falun Gong practitioners are awesome. They risk great dangers to do these things. I respect them very much. They're also resilient. For all these years, they have been persuading people to quit the CCP and to acknowledge truthfulness, compassion, and tolerance.
Xu Hongwei, a Chinese living in Canada, withdrew from the Communist Young Pioneers several years ago at Chinatown.
I quit the Youth League several years ago. I ran into Falun Gong practitioners in Chinatown and they asked me, "Are you a CCP party member? If you are, you should quit the CCP." I only joined the Young Pioneers when I was a kid, and initially I didn't think it was necessary to quit. They explained to me why I still need to quit. And I agreed with their reasoning. It is true, the nature of the CCP is against God. It is against the universe and mankind, and it destroys human morality.
Through the Tiananmen massacre incident, Xu realized that the CCP's true nature is violence, deceit, and hatred. He believes that the appeasement policy the West has adopted in the past few decades has actually been enabling the CCP.
What is the characteristic of appeasement? It is muddled thinking, and no distinction between friends and enemy. The so-called cooperation with China is a collusion for the sake of economic interests. The West knows that the CCP is evil because everyone knows of the Tiananmen massacre. In addition, the CCP is persecuting Falun Gong practitioners and is guilty of using them for live organ harvesting. The West knows about these crimes clearly, and they have simply passed some bills to condemn the CCP, but after that, there were no concrete actions.
Xu believes that since President Trump took office, the United States has started to change its policies to resist the CCP, especially as the CCP virus is spreading around the globe. China has become one of the most lonely countries in the world. Xu said, "We are currently at the historic stage of eliminating the CCP."
What is the real situation now? Heaven is about to destroy the CCP, and we have entered an historic stage of eliminating the CCP. It all started in 2017. The CCP recently passed the national security law in Hong Kong. It actually placed a thick rope around its own neck. In the West, President Trump's team has begun a comprehensive counterattack against the CCP, and they are wise enough to distinguish the CCP from China.
The U.S. CIS's new policy to ban CCP members came out on October 2nd. Liu Jifan applauded this policy, saying that it is well justified.
The CCP is an evil organization. If you want to be a good person, you should not join this organization. If you join before, you should quit as soon as possible, right? If you don't want to withdraw and you still want to retain your vested interests by being a party member, and at the same time you want to enjoy freedom, democracy, rule of law, and social welfare in a free country, that is not allowed. Good and evil are incompatible. How can it be that you are both a member of an evil organization and a member of a democratic country? Isn't it a split personality?
According to statistics of the CCP's internal agencies in 2012, 90% of the CCP's Central Committee members have family members or relatives living overseas as permanent residents or naturalized citizens. Analysts believe that the United States immigration ban will affect the top CCP members the most. Wang Yan calls on Chinese all over the world to formally quit the CCP on the Epoch Times website so as to stay safe.
On October 6th, the WHO disclosed at a press conference that the CCP is in contact with them, requesting an assessment of its locally produced COVID-19 vaccines as a step toward making them available for international use. This news has caused widespread concern since the vaccine has not yet completed large-scale clinical trials and safety testing. According to Reuters News, on October 6th, Soroko Escolet, WHO's coordinator for essential medicines and health technologies in the Western Pacific region, told a news conference conducted online that China had held preliminary discussions with the WHO to have its vaccines included in a list for emergency use. The WHO's emergency use listing procedure allows unlicensed vaccines and treatments to be assessed to expedite their availability in public health emergencies. Potentially through this emergency use listing, the quality and safety of these vaccines and efficacy could be assessed, and then this could be made available for our licensees, Escalante said.
I think that whether it is the CCP or the WHO discussing these issues like this, they have their own deep-seated reasons and motivations, which further proves that the WHO is being used by the CCP and has become a tool of the CCP. The CCP makes vaccines in China, and the WHO helps promote, advertise, and make them enter the market.
The CCP's mouthpiece media reported that China is conducting clinical trials of 11 COVID-19 vaccines, among which 4 have entered Phase 3 clinical trials. China National Biotechnology Group, a state-owned enterprise by the CCP, is conducting Phase 3 trials involving more than 40,000 volunteers in about 10 countries in Asia, South America, and the Middle East. In China, officials have vaccinated more than 350,000 people, with an unfinished trial vaccine developed by this company.
Those companies that develop vaccines in China were unknown before. How come they have such strong technologies all of a sudden that they can take the lead in the world? When so many developed countries have not yet developed the vaccine, how can China's state-owned enterprises be able to take the lead so quickly? This is a big question.
Now that the vaccine trial has not been completed, the WHO is in talks with the CCP to discuss promoting the vaccines, causing worldwide safety concerns.
The WHO is controlled by the Chinese government to a large extent. It not only helped the CCP cover up the pandemic, but also wanted to help China get rid of responsibility. The CCP is now looking for the WHO to come forward and promote vaccines, which is suspicious. In fact, one of the CCP's most important goals on most international issues is to serve its political interests. The CCP cannot and will not be responsible for the lives of the people.
Previously, President Donald Trump had repeatedly criticized the WHO's poor performance in responding to this pandemic, calling the WHO a puppet of the CCP. Regarding the origin of the CCP virus, countries around the world have requested the WHO to conduct field investigations in China. In July, the WHO sent 2 experts to China, but failed to arrive in Wuhan, which caused criticism and dissatisfaction from many countries. Faced with doubts from the international community, Michael Ryan, the executive director of the WHO's emergency plan, claimed on October 5th that the list of experts to investigate in China must first be submitted to the Beijing authorities for review.
The WHO should be responsible to all the countries around the world and to the countries participating in the WHO, not to the CCP. The CCP virus has infected more than 34 million people worldwide this time, with more than 1 million deaths. It is totally unacceptable for the CCP to review the investigators. It is equivalent to saying that in an investigation of a murder case, the murderer selects who can come as an investigator to conduct the investigations.
Lai Jianping, a master of international law from China University of Political Science and Law, also stated that the WHO submitted the list of investigation members to the CCP for review in order to safeguard the CCP's criminal behavior of concealing the epidemic and spreading the virus.
It is very likely that the WHO knows more detailed information. The CCP locks out some truly capable, independent, objective, and impartial investigative team members so they could get through it again.
On the 5th, the United States and EU requested an independent investigation team to assess the WHO's responses to COVID-19 and submit an investigation report before the World Health Assembly next year so that member states can reach consensus on issues such as reforming the WHO as soon as possible.